All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. Um, this is a time management and organization tips for parents. So if you are a student, this is not for you, it's only for parents. We're so glad you're here today, and we hope we can give you a few tips and tricks. Of course, we could write a book on this, right? But we hope to give you a few tips and tricks. We gave this presentation last year, and it is similar. It's the same information. So if you came to our presentation last year, you can stay for a refresher, or you can go do something else because you will have seen it before. It's up to you.
Ms. McPherson, nutrition is good for the brain, especially older parents' brains. It's good.
So we're just going to introduce ourselves really quickly. If you don't know us already, I'm Carol McPherson. I am the lead counselor, and I serve students with last names G through L. Miss Rios is not here today because, well, she's here, but she's not at our meeting. And the reason why is she is giving the makeup SAT today. But Miss Rios serves students last names A through F. Miss Cardona. We're all at my desk.
Hi, I'm Ms. Cardona, and I serve students with last names M through R.
And I'm Sandy Woodrow, also squashed into this desk area, and I serve students' last names S through Z. We're a cohesive team. We like being together.
All right, Ms. Woodrow is going to continue.
Okay, we're going to start our presentation at the beginning, the place where time management and organization will be learned and will become habit and will make life seem better for all of us, which is the adolescent brain. You may have realized there's a lot going on there right now. Many tabs are open in your student's brain, and we're going to make use of that. In the last 20 years, there's been a lot of brain research. There's been tremendous changes in how we can do imaging. We've learned a lot about the brain, and one of the things we've learned is the adolescent brain's cognitive development is most robust. Let me switch this slide. It's the cognitive development that's going on there is second only to infancy as far as how many things are changing and what's going on. The interesting thing is that adolescence has expanded, it's lengthened in our society on the front end biologically and culturally on the back end. Front end because of some of the endocrine disruptors that are in our world these days, such as like plastics that we use, things in our hair care products, and even artificial light, like from screens, all of that jump starts adolescence. And then in society, some of our kids are going to school longer, getting higher degrees. We're pushing some of the adult responsibilities till later. We're letting students stay on our insurance even till older years. And so all of that has increased the time period of adolescence, which now could actually last from age 10 to age 25. Wait, isn't this a time management and organization presentation? Are you in the wrong Zoom? Why are we talking about the brain? Yes, we are, you are in the right place, but your timing is perfect in your child's life because your teen's brain is maturing right now, and what it's focused on is executive functioning. It's focused on cognitive capabilities and impulse control. All of those are the things that are needed for planning and for decision making, which ties exactly right into time management and organization. So you're in the right place, and this is our topic. Adolescent, a dynamic time for brain development, and these illustrations are supposed to depict the difference in a child's thinking and your adolescent's thinking. The child's thinking is like driving alone at a sustained, steady speed on a single lane dirt road, compared with hitting an 8-lane expressway that's complex, it's complex integrated system. What's happening in your young adult, your adolescent student's brain is the myelin growth. There's an increase in the white matter in the brain, and it's allowing for a greater quantity and quality of thoughts and making connections all over the place. So your student is learning to problem solve, but they're also incessantly questioning the problem solving of others. So they're recalculating their mental GPS system. They're exploring the paths they've gone down before, but they're also looking to make new paths. And all of that works together, hopefully with your guidance, parents, to get them to their preferred destination. And there's a bonus. Right now, the heightened activity in the hippocampus. When the teenage brain senses a positive outcome from something, even if the something is time management organization, it loves it. When that brain gets dopamine, it feels like a fire hydrant stream of dopamine. Things feel better to teenagers than they will ever feel again. They respond to that dopamine much more than you or I do. So when something feels good, it feels really good. What we would like to happen is for them to practice some time management organization skills that they get some joy out of, some reward out of, maybe not as much reward as playing a video game, but when they feel like something has gone well for them because of a habit they've started practicing, then that's likely going to increase their use of that. And so it'll become habit formation. So they get rewarded when they're organized, they get a better test grade because they were able to study, and then that builds that pathway to be used more often.
All right, we're going to give you some parent tips. So we're going to start with Miss Cardona, and she's going to give you 3 tips now.
Okay, the first tip is a big one. Don't be afraid to be the parent. It is one of the most important roles you will have. Everyone within a family group has a role and responsibility. Those relationships will shift over time, but when your child is an adolescent, you are still needed. So remember, don't be afraid to be the parent. That is your best role. So what we mean by that is it is entirely possible that your child is smarter than you are, especially if they come to LASA. But you're still the parent and you have more experience. You can see the bigger picture and you have better focus. Help your student learn adult decision-making by discussing your thought process out loud. Now, it may seem like your adolescent may push back, and that's okay. They're not trying to be necessarily adversarial. They may be developing their award-winning LASA debate skills. But more typically, they're practicing thinking, problem solving, and communication. You can listen to them and let yourself be persuaded if they are right or if the battle isn't worth waging. But don't give in to a wrong consequential decision just to keep the peace. Choices have consequences, and sometimes it's hard, but parents, you can do hard things. Another tip we're going to give you, okay, is weekly family meetings. So family meetings are a great strategy for bringing the family together and regrouping. Family meetings allow for planning and discussions of valuable information. When having a family meeting, keep it simple, but be consistent. Set goals for the week, and how can we get all the family to participate? You can do that by giving them roles such as timekeeper, note taker, etc. And when you're discussing a topic, make sure everyone shares ideas and solutions and try to solve it before moving on. So parents, that allows for your student or your child to have a little responsibility on the decision-making process. And keep the meetings fun, bring food and snacks and drinks, and have a time limit so they don't become so the meetings don't become a chore, but more of an informative, productive meeting. So the benefits of a family meeting. The best part of it is that you can share important information, you can plan outings, you can have goals for the week or the month. Benefits include communication skills, family bonding, group values, meeting norms, and it also helps to keep each other accountable for goals and expectations, especially if you have a whiteboard. Best part, everyone has a voice and we learn from each other. Okay, this is a big one, parents. A cluttered backpack. Parents, please look inside your child's backpack. What is in that backpack? Those are examples of what we see here at LASA. So this could be one of the first tasks that you could tackle during the family meeting. Help your child look through their backpacks and remove unnecessary items. Remove all trash and keep important items. Parents, your child may need help distinguishing what is considered important and what is considered trash.
All right, I'm tip number 4, which is procrastination. So all of us procrastinate. Well, I say all of us. Maybe I shouldn't say that. A large percentage of us procrastinate. Students are no exception to that. But as you know from being a parent, as long as you have been so far, that's typically will create stress later on. So I want to talk to you about ways to discuss procrastination with your kids. So I want to introduce you to our 3 friends here. So these 3 friends are motivation, determination, and discipline. Our favorite friend is motivation. So those times when you're super motivated to do a project or run a marathon or do your homework, those are times happen, but they're not always there. So I call motivation a fickle foe. So I call it the friend that you can't wait to have at the party. If you're planning a party, you can't wait for motivation to show up. She's fun, she's energetic, she makes everything better. But sometimes she doesn't show up when she's supposed to show up to the party. So you have to depend, or I tell my students, you have to depend on your reliable friends' determination and discipline. So a long time ago, I'm dating myself, but a long time ago, they had these posters, and you'll know what I'm talking about, some of you, that were like, that would say motivation or dedication or respect, and they had like athletes on the posters. So I remember the motivation one, and that person who ran that marathon or did the, big contest that they won, it probably always wasn't motivation. That person didn't get to that place without having these 2, determination and discipline, there beside them. And your student didn't get to LASA without some of that. So when your kid is like, Mom, I'm just not motivated, or Dad, I just don't, the motivation's not there. I'll do it when I'm motivated. You can't wait for motivation to show up because she's a fickle foe. She won't show up when she's supposed to. So remind them that they have determination and discipline to get them through those times of no motivation. So use that family meeting time that Ms. Cardona was talking about to talk about when you're going to get things done. So I suggest, and there's lots of ways that you can do this, but one thing that we suggest is to have a big whiteboard in a central room in the house. And that whiteboard can be for everyone in the family. It can be just for your student or students. And then you can have, if you do it for everyone, everyone can have their own color. Maybe Dad is red, maybe the student is green, that type of thing. Or you can have, if it's just for the students, then they can have different subjects be different colors. You get to decide how you want to organize that. But the dry erase board is kind of a good thing because everyone has eyes on it. Same thing with a Google Calendar. If you're not like physical writing, the Google Calendar is great. So just make sure everyone can kind of see it. And I think it's a good idea, as Ms. Cardona was talking about, is to make it a family event. So this kid doesn't feel like everything's focused on them all the time. You as an adult have to decide, when are you going to go to your meetings? When are you going to, do the fundraiser or your project or whatever it is that you're working on? So everyone kind of has a part to play in the way this house functions. So just make sure, another thing is make sure if a kid has a project, your student has a project that's due in 3 weeks. Okay, great. You put that on the calendar. Do, the Hell project they do in English too, maybe that's due in 3 weeks. Well, you have to also help your student plan, when is that going to take place? When are they going to work on that? First of all, think, okay, my student probably needs 10 hours. We'll add 20% to that, right? Some time. And then say, okay, Monday after softball practice, I want you to work, maybe an hour on it. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe have the student say, I'm going to work on it an hour here, Find those 10 plus 20% hours somewhere before the 3 weeks. Help them plan that in, because all of a sudden life gets busy, 3 weeks goes by and it's due and you have to stay up. The procrastination, right? You have to stay up all night doing it. We don't want that.
We're not going to stay up all
No
night.
staying up
We'll
all
talk
night.
about that later.
Okay, when they procrastinate, and some of them may, that's going to happen, try as much as you can to avoid confrontation in the moment. They, just like you don't like to hear "I told you so," that they're already upset, they're already frustrated. So wait for the moment to pass, let it be a learning tool, that they procrastinated. And when things are over and they're calm, say, "Hey, remember last week when we procrastinated a little bit and didn't get that done? How can we make that better? How can I support you? What I don't want to, at this point, I want you to be in charge of what you do, but how can I support you?" So just problem solve that together. Resist the urge to micromanage. It's going to be, you may be awesome at time management and you know that every minute is important, right? So you may, say in this minute, you need to do this, and then you should do this. Try to avoid that, because our job as parents is to train our students. And sometimes it's a trial and error. So let them do it themselves. All right. On that note, let's just talk for a few minutes about study strategies. We could write a book on study strategies. I'm just going to give you some highlights. Know that every student has a different way that they approach studying, and it may be different from yours. And I think it's fine as a parent to allow that to some extent. For example, I personally am kind of old school, and I really needed it quiet and no interruptions. That's just kind of how I am. Well, our students have been working on, their brain has been multitasking with computers and cell phones for a number of years. So it may help them to have music going on or something like that. So whatever they think they need, maybe allow that for a while and see how it goes. Trust them enough to see how it goes. So one thing though, I tell students all the time in my office, I'm like, you need to be honest with yourself about your screen time, because they think that they're studying. And so they'll start to study, get about, halfway through a paragraph, and then their text goes off. Oh, let me look at my text. So you're looking at your text, looking. And then what do you have to do? Start over on that paragraph, right? Because you're not into it anymore. So maybe this is a good time to train them, your students, how to manage their device themselves. You don't want to be the manager, right? You don't want to be the police of the phone. But in the beginning, try to teach them how to, okay, we're going to put it away for a little while and you're going to do some work. 20 minutes. You can talk about, the concert this weekend for 20 minutes. So let's study for 20 minutes, then have 5 minutes. The key is coming back after that 5 minutes though, right? So 20 minutes, intense studying, 5 minutes, and then go back. So maybe help them get into that routine. So each one of these tips that you see on the screen, I could talk to for a long time, but just some things. You don't need one study space. If your student wants to have multiple study spaces, let that be part of their freedom, as long as that's getting done, right? So maybe their room can be one study space, maybe the kitchen, maybe taking them to the library or allowing them to go. But I think, making sure that you can monitor and see how that study goes, because they're going to be studying very soon in college on their own. So what you're teaching them today is going to carry on with them to the next level. We already talked about starting small, 20 minutes, and taking breaks. Managing that cell phone is huge. Getting into a routine, create distraction free. That's part of the cell phone. Class time. I have so many students, and the teachers tell me all the time, when I give free time in class to work, I can't tell you that the students, what they're doing. They're looking on TikTok. They're together watching YouTube videos. Instead, they could take some of their lunchtime or some of their class time and talk to their teacher about, hey, could you read this paragraph for me and help me improve it? Or can you work through 2 math problems with me? I mean, just little bits and pieces of time like that my stepson went to LASA and he graduated in 18. And he said that he spent, all his teachers said this too, he spent the extra time in class working. He would work from bell to bell. And then he didn't have to work so much at home. Huge. It made things huge. And by the way, he's about to graduate from Texas A&M. Whoop, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, yay. Let's see, maybe also talking to your students about doing a little bit every day instead of waiting to do that history, and studying for hours and hours and hours. Maybe just having them do a little bit every day. That's another tip. It's kind of up to them how they want to do it. I think the last thing is we have a lot of students that will get a bad grade and then they just are destroyed over that bad grade. We can help students overcome as far as the college piece. Colleges, we tell them, aren't necessarily looking for someone who's perfect. They don't actually want someone perfect because they know we're humans and we're going to make mistakes. They want to see that students can recover. So they're looking for trends. If you were lower in one area, what did you do to recover? And that's the lesson that you can teach your students. Yeah, this wasn't your best work. Time got away from you, something happened. However, what can we do to recover? Because that's the true essence of a learner, is what can you do to recover? Finally, sleep. Ms. Woodrow is going to talk about how important that is to that young brain.
Okay, great. Here's my favorite part to talk about, except for I also like to talk about the brain, but sleep. Sleep is crucial. It's crucial for good health and clear thinking. It's non-negotiable. In this school district, we've been having lots of conversations about equity, in fact, in our whole society. And this is something that I love about sleep. Sleep is great for everyone. There's nobody that I don't think can't benefit from sleep. It's the least expensive, most powerful academic variable under our control. So what I would like you to do now as an interactive item in our meeting together is to type in the chat, honestly, how many hours of sleep you got last night. So start chatting, put in the chat how many hours you got last night. I'm waiting. There we go. Yes, 6, not enough. 6 seems to be a common number. 7. Okay.
8.25. Wow.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Not enough.
Most of you could have benefited from an hour more. And I bet it was probably under your control that you could have gone to bed a half hour earlier. I bet you probably could have. If you did, you would probably be more efficient in your thinking tasks today. The sleeping brain, and that's in quotations because your brain never really sleeps. It's active at night. It's active when you think you're sleeping. It's hard at work. It processes your day's learning. It reorganizes and files all the material you learned, and then it sorts it. It connects the new things that your student did, the new information that your student was exposed to with prior knowledge, makes those connections, builds those roles, those roads, those pathways. Your students are able to start solving problems while they're asleep before they get up, so they're better prepared for the day. If I told you that the counselors at LASA had worked together and we came up with the single-hour study strategy, we had a thing that would help the students in physics, in other sciences, in English, in math, and it took 1 hour a day that you had to commit to the 1 hour a day, and we had like a sign up for it. I bet many parents and many students would jump at that chance if I said, oh, it's going to raise your GPA a certain amount, it's going to raise your grades a certain amount, but it will improve across the board. Everybody would be excited. And you know what? We do have it. And it's called sleep. 1 extra hour of sleep every night. Okay. Sometimes, I don't know if y'all can tell, but sometimes we're having trouble advancing our slides. And so it's not that we're asleep at the wheel. It's that our computer is not moving, but there we go. There we go. There's going to be times in school when things are tougher than others. There's going to be periods that, just like the counselors, we're busier at certain times of the year. We don't have time to make a video like this or a meeting like this for you. And then other times we're able to. But for the most part, well-organized and disciplined students should be able to go to bed at a reasonable time and still get all their work done. When I believe it was my first year at LASA, I was driving some of the ambassadors to a middle school for a presentation. And one of our tip top students I mean, high academic flyer as far as GPA goes. He told the other people in the car that he goes to bed by 9 o'clock. And everybody's like, what? And he said, no, he does. Sometimes he reads like a novel in bed that's assigned an English class or something like that. But he said he was off his computer, off the screen, and he was in a horizontal position at 9 o'clock. And he said it made all the difference. John Hopkins, pediatrician, says that teenagers need 9 to 9.5 hours of sleep a night. He said that's more than they needed when they were 10 years old. I know, like, it's kind of a surprise. But hey, what if your favorite LASA student wants more time to study? Shouldn't they judge for themselves how much they sleep or how much sleep they need? We've got a little video here, and I hope it's going to work. Miss McPherson's going to turn it on for us. And it's about a little over 3 minutes long, maybe 3.5. We might sometimes have a commercial. That's the price we pay. This is not the video, but this is another commercial. Now we're going to, you know what? There we go. You can hear it? No. You probably didn't. Okay, we know that you can't hear that. So we will try to go and make the computer share, audio, share sound. We're going to start that again. And we appreciate your patience. We'll back it up, but maybe not past the commercials, maybe,
hours. But what would actually happen if you cut out 2 hours of your sleep every night? First, we need to understand how much sleep your body and brain actually need. The vast majority of research on the topic has concluded that around 8 hours of sleep is optimal for the average person. But today, almost 50% of people get 6 hours or less each night. Now, the first night of less sleep may actually trigger the mesolimbic system, releasing dopamine and giving you a sense of adrenaline. But your brain slowly begins to shut off the areas associated with planning and making decisions. And even though you may still feel fine getting 6 hours, the truth is actually much darker and worrisome than you might realize. Scientists use a technique known as psychomotor vigilance tasks, or PVTs, to understand the impact of sleep deprivation on humans in studies. Simply put, it's a reaction test. A red button randomly turns green, and people have to push it as fast as possible. Not so surprisingly, those who get 8 hours of sleep over a 2-week period show very few lapses in attention and no cognitive declines. But those groups that receive either 6 or 4 hours of sleep see declining PVT results on almost a daily basis for the entire 2-week period. Of course, the 4-hour group performs the worst. But these results don't just show a loss of concentration, they show full lapses in awareness called microsleeps. In other words, their brains aren't just slower, but shutting off for moments at a time. When looking at the results deeper, scientists concluded that getting 6 hours of sleep for 10 days in a row was the same as not sleeping for 24 hours straight. That's the same cognitive decline as being legally drunk. And if you get 4 hours of sleep for 11 days, it's like you haven't slept for 48 hours straight. These studies also show that participants were not at all aware of their cognitive declines. In other words, when you're tired, it's like being that drunk person at a party who insists that they can drive home fine. Other tests show that your ability to memorize and retain information, or even do simple math or problem solving, decline at similar rates. But perhaps the scariest fact is that even after one night of 4 or 5 hours of sleep, your natural killer cells, which stop cancer cells from proliferating in your body, drop by 70%. You're also more likely to catch a cold because your immune system is weakened, which is why when we're sick, we feel compelled to sleep so much. Chronic lack of sleep is also linked to bowel, prostate, and breast cancer, and people over 45 who sleep under 6 hours a night are also 200% more likely to have a heart attack or stroke. Even the World Health Organization has classified any form of nighttime shift work as a probable carcinogen. So even though you may swear that cutting 2 hours of sleep makes you so much more productive and that you don't feel any worse, just remember that every single day your cognitive abilities continue to decrease, costing you much more than you may have bargained for. Be sure to check.
Okay, bargain 4 was our key to stop that video. Let's go ahead to the next one. So that's kind of scary. And as parents, we want to protect our children from the things on the screen because sleep deprivation increases the likelihood of an inability to concentrate, poor grades, drowsy driving incidents. Yes, I'm reading this slide to you. Anxiety, depression, thoughts of suicide, and even suicide attempts. Okay, so when we're worried about our teens getting enough sleep, I want to point out something that was new to me when we first wrote this, and it was in some research that said the way that young people initially learn self-control is to practice imposing on themselves the rules that parents imposed on their children earlier. So when your teenager was a child and you had rules in the house, they just follow those rules because you're the parent, right? And when they get a little older and they start taking care of themselves, they start practicing by holding themselves accountable to those same rules before they start making their own rules. So you can insist on a bedtime. That's the implication of this slide. And you can also have some other controls. You can decide that we're going to cut off the Wi-Fi at midnight. You can decide that we're going to park all the family phones in the kitchen for overnight. There's some things you can do. You may not need to do that. This is not a one-size-fits-all meeting for everybody in every family, but the consequences of sleep deprivation are real, and it's okay for you as a parent to take control of some of that. This next slide doesn't look like it matches the rest, and that's because we stole it from one of our member schools. Last year, Ms. Rios and I attended a mental health summit, and it was put on by the National Consortium of Secondary STEM Schools. Say that fast 3 times. They had done some research of the students in schools like ours, other magnet schools, other advanced academic schools, and one of the things they found, if I can direct your attention to the yellow part, is that reduced sleep caused increased anxiety. You can jump in here anywhere of this circle and it keeps going around, which causes compromised relationships, increased stress, reduced sleep, increased anxiety. It keeps going, but that's not what we want for our young people, is it? So the next slide is, it's entitled Empower Your Student, but I do want to put one more thing that the Stanford School of Medicine found out, and that was, and this is surprising too, adolescents have better mood regulation and less fatigue when, this is the surprising part to me, when the parents set a bedtime. Okay, so it's not just when the student has decided, oh, this is a good idea for me, but the study actually showed if the parent put that boundary out there, that the kids did better. And this I love, when that bedtime is before midnight. And the reason I love that is my grandmother used to always say, and I'm going to share it to you, go to bed on the same day you got up. And so that equals midnight for most of us, right? If you're going to go to bed on the same day you got up, you're going to go to bed before midnight.
All right, our very last tip, and that is about empowering your student. So you only have a few years left at home. And one thing that recently Miss Woodrow did with her family, which I thought was really cool, and you may want to steal this from Miss Woodrow, is she gave each one of her children that have children, right?
I'm a grandma 5 times over.
A jar of marbles for each student or each child they have. So that the number of marbles in the jar represented the number of weeks that those parents have left with their students. So with their children at home before high school graduation. So that means a lot of math on her part, but that's okay. Miss Woodrow likes math. So to some, of her children that have 8 or 9-year-olds, there was less marbles in there than the children that have 2-year-olds. But that marble, again, represents each week you have until your student graduates from high school. Kind of food for thought there, because you could carry that marble around with you in your pocket or somewhere to just remind you that the things that I'm giving and the wisdom I'm trying to instill in my student today, even though it's a hard day and they're mad at me and I'm mad at them and things aren't going right, you don't have very many marbles left until they have to start making these decisions on their own. So just remember Miss Woodrow and her jar of marbles. It's kind of a good thing. So as you're setting forward, think of some skills that you could do to put into your student's life. Maybe have them cook a meal once a week, or you cook it with them together. Have them make it the grocery list, go to the store. Maybe just, it could be kind of fun, but they need to have a little bit of skill instead of just study, and then they don't know how to do anything by the time they're 18 and living somewhere else. Maybe have them prepare their own breakfast and lunch someday or each day. That's totally up to you as parents on how you want to do that, but we think it might be a good idea for them to learn how to do some of these things. Household chores, do they know how to do laundry? And then as far as their educational journey, this is really where we can step in and give you some tips. As a parent, particularly when students are making the transition from middle school to high school, we get lots of emails from parents, lots of them. And actually, we understand that they were in middle school, they kind of don't know what they're doing. But as your student gets older, we may reach out to you and say, hey, I haven't heard from your student yet. Do you think they could reach out to me? And there's a reason for that. Part of what we want to do at LASA and what we want you to do at home is empower them to be able to make their own decisions about what classes they need to take, or how they're going, what future they're going to go for, or maybe they're having an issue with a teacher and they want to talk to me about it. Instead of the parent talking to me, maybe the student can say, hey, I'm in the classroom and this is going on. So as your student gets older, maybe resist the urge to communicate and have your student do it. Maybe sit down with them, help them create an email, teach them how to do that, teach them how to advocate for themselves, and then regularly discuss their dreams, aspirations, and goals and how to get there. So I want to show you something that we as counselors, academic counselors, have to send paperwork. Every time we write a letter of recommendation, we also have to send paperwork to colleges. Part of that paperwork, there are different questions that various colleges ask us. This is one example. The day-to-day parent/student relationship for this student is best described as. So know that it's okay if you're advocating for your student as a 9th grader, but as they get closer to leaving and being in college, they really need to be doing some things that are on their own. So just know that we are always looking to this. We're looking at what they're doing. Right now, Ms. Cardona is working a lot with students on ACC. So it's amazing to us that the students that are very having a hard time registering for ACC, and it's one reason or another, but sometimes we're really getting them to go back and read directions again, because we want them to have that skill of being able to apply to go to college, even if it's ACC, on their own. So she's spending a lot of time working with the kids
and their parents. I get a lot of phone calls from parents trying to register their kids. And this is one of the lessons we try to teach them is we send out step-by-step instructions on how to register, and we kind of want the student to kind of do that. And they can also reach out to ACC or myself, but it's a little difficult to respond to the parent of a student who's trying to become a college student. So if the student is struggling to even follow the first, steps on how to register, maybe we need to reconsider if they're ready to even sign up for a college class.
All right, last thing we're going to say, and then we can answer some questions that you guys have had in the chat. Give lots of praise. You're maybe the only person in your kid's life that's going to give them praise, right? So be specific about it. For example, I can tell that you did a good job on managing your time today. Thank you so much. And look at how great it turned out on your project or your quiz or whatever. Or great job with your self-discipline on your cell phone time. I can tell that it made a difference for you. And I know that might not be your parenting style, but just keep in mind that we all need praise. All of us do. And you can do it in any way possible. Maybe it's not verbal, maybe it's written, but just make sure that you're reinforcing that with some sort of positivity for them. All right, so we saw some people in the chat that might have some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing this. And then if you have questions, we have just a few more minutes left.
Hi, are we allowed to come up on mute and ask the questions?
Of course, that's easier for us.
Awesome. I just have a general question overall. I know the students are always stressing about their GPA and stuff. And something that my student has noticed is that he has friends at Westwood and McNeil, and he's saying that their GPA is a lot more than students at LASA because they are primarily looking at an overall 90 to or 95 to 100 is considered one grade point in the GPA versus at LASA every single grade point goes down. So my initial a 99 would count as a 4 point or a 3.9 or a 4.9 on a 5-point scale versus at Westwood or maybe McNeil or something, they're just considered a 4.0. I guess how would you guys explain that, or how can we help explain that stress factor and clarify that in our students' minds?
When we send the student's transcript to a college, we also send what's called the LASA profile. The GPA system is set by the district. That's not a specific LASA thing, but schools recalculate GPAs to fit what they want to see. I went on a college tour to the Chicago area, and one of the colleges I went out to see gave us a little worksheet of how they work through a student's transcript. And this was specific to this particular college. And the first thing they did is have you count how many honors classes, and you wrote the number down. And then on the side, it said English, and you put how many A's, how many B's, how many C's, math, how many A's, B's, C's, just like that. But it stripped off the honors points. It stripped off the AP points. And I asked about that, and they said, we've given them over here by counting the AP classes. They get mental credit for that over there. And they recalculated. And I know Miss Rios has come from Florida, and she said that those colleges, depending on what the student's major is, they will recalculate the GPA. So they're going to look at what they want to look at, and you can compare a LASA student to a LASA student, but maybe not to a Westwood or McNeil student as far as GPA.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Another thing was I know some colleges, they already have this strict GPA minimum requirement. Say for example, right, this whole GPA issue with LASA, maybe having a harder scale than other college or other high schools, right? So in that case, how would they, how can we apply to those colleges, for example, if their minimum GPA was a 3.5 or a 3.0, but then at LASA, you know how the grading scale is a bit tougher. Are we still allowed to apply to those colleges, or how does that work?
You can always apply, and you can have that explained when they look at the profile, or your student can talk to their admissions counselor. I'm going to push back a little bit on the idea that our grading scale is tougher, in that just like let's say there's a range at one of those other schools, and so if your student scores on the bottom of that range, such as like if they got a 90 and that counted just as much as a 95. If they scored 1 point down, that's a big jump in those schools. Whereas for us, each point is its own just sliver of difference. So a student that jumps between getting the 96 or the 95, it's not a significant jump here at LASA, whereas it might be a significant jump at a school that lumps several grade points together. We have some videos on our home screen. If you go to LASA Home, you can look at Counselor's Corner and you can go down. There's some stuff that says like academic resources, and it has some GPA explanations. It might not be exactly the answers that you're looking for, but you could watch those. And then if you continue to have questions, just email your counselor. We'll be fine. We'll be happy to discuss that with you. Although you should just bear in mind that the whole GPA system is a district decision and not a LASA specific decision.
And we're happy to discuss GPA and all of that, but we really wanted to have a presentation on time management and organization. So if you guys could direct your questions, that'd be great for that. Just pop in if you want to ask us a question. We have just a few more minutes.
Yeah, hi.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the sleep. So does nap helps? Like sometimes I have seen that after coming from school, while studying and while he's on his bed, he sleeps. So
those power naps do help, and there's many books out right now about sleep. But the longer naps, which my husband takes a power nap in the morning and the afternoon, like 20 minutes. If I lay down, it's like a two-hour crash, and they say those 2-hour crashes are not good because they disrupt your evening sleep. But the shorter naps are good. But I can remember my own children coming home just exhausted and taking a longer nap just to be able to think clearly to get work done.
Did they stay up too late, Ms. Woodruff?
Yes, they did. One of them stayed up later than the other. And he's shorter. I think maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know.
So that might be a good thing to do a little research on power naps and see how well. But I think that's a good tip is power nap versus 2-hour, out.
I know he sleeps around, I have seen that around an hour, and obviously they stay awake till 11:30 and highest sometimes 12. Yes, and morning you have 6 hours sleep in the night, but yes, he is taking naps frequently. Yes. So does it help?
I don't actually know the full real answer for that. I just know that the last book that I read said that uninterrupted 9.5 hours is really crucial. And so that anything that you were doing that interrupted that, whether it was sleep in the day, whether it was medicine in the day, whether it was caffeine in the day, if it interrupted that lengthy time, that wasn't positive.
Okay. I'll research more. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have another question about sleep. My kiddo goes through like a cycle where they sleep for 6 hours, 5 hours, 2 days, and then the next day it goes almost 8 to 9 and very difficult to get them out of the bed. What happens if I kind of push them to have that cutoff time and enforce it? And then the kid is in that state where he's not done with his homework, not done with his studying, and then gives examples of other kids who sleep only 4 or 5 hours and have excellent GPA. It all comes down to a balance of what we want or what we accept is as normal in the house. Sometimes I want a peaceful child, a child well rested, then that GPA.
I did not raise a child at LASA, but I did raise smart children, and the internet did exist. I think I would ask them to look up some research maybe, but I will tell you that when I did raise children that would say, oh, so-and-so, and I'm like, I'm not so-and-so's mother. I'm not raising them. I'm not responsible for them. I'm doing the best I can with you during these few marble years I have left with you. And so as parents and as counselors, as teachers, we're all going to sometimes make mistakes, but we are going to do what we think is best for our students. Sometimes they may have a night where they have to stay up, but what happens is we sometimes let that become normal. We let there to be an emergency every week where they have to stay up one night, and that is not healthy. They say that the best thing is even to have a regular bedtime and a regular wake up time, even on weekends. I know that's really hard, and teenagers do a lot of sleeping on weekends. They say that you can't really truly catch up, but
That's right.
but sometimes they are going to have those growth spurts where they are going to sleep a lot. I would rather err on the side of too much sleep than not enough sleep.
Looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat. Let me see. I'm having a problem looking at all of it. In your reading, did you come across any information on the importance of quality of sleep over quantity? I haven't done the reading, Miss Woodrow has, but I'm actually doing a sleep study on myself, and I have been for the past 6 weeks. I don't know if you or your students have a sort of a device, like I have a Fitbit, and it can somehow track my heart rate or whatever and tells me when I go to sleep and when I wake up at night, which I may not always remember. So, I mean, my sleep study on myself is just myself. So I'm not a Harvard doctor or anything, but I don't need as many of those power naps that we were talking about. When I can like set my sleep time and go to bed at a certain time, my energy is better throughout the day. I'm not as forgetful. Those of you that are more seasoned, none of you are as seasoned as we are, right, Ms. Woodrow? But I'm just better. So I don't have the answer to that. I'm sure it would be something that you could find. And the next question says, any strategy for limiting classwork? So we don't have any control over what teachers do. That's just, that's up to them. It's up to their department chairs, and the department chairs have to answer to the principal. So we as counselors are here to just try to manage, like, for example, if you're given something, then an activity or a test or to study for, to start right away instead of waiting till the night before. That's our training. But as far as us going to, a teacher and saying you can't give classwork on weekends, I wish we could, but we aren't able to do that. All right, well, we have some students lined up outside our doors wanting to visit with us. So we're gonna pop out, but we're gonna see if we can post this. You're so welcome. We'll see if we can post this later on so you can, well, you don't need to look at it again because you were here, but those who weren't here can see it again. So we're so glad you joined us, and maybe we'll do something else next year for parents. So we're all going to say bye. Bye, Ms. Cardona. Thank you for joining us.